So over here, question number 1, we have a simplifying and expanding question. The first step is to put an equal sign. Next, we expand these binomials here using the FOIL method. So what is FOIL? FOIL stands for front or first, outside, inside, and last. We use this method by multiplying the first two numbers, the outside two numbers, the inside two numbers, then the last two numbers. So let's do it. So 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 3x is 6x. 6x, take away negative 5x, is positive x. And negative 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. And we are now done half of this question. Now we just have to square this binomial here. We could just expand it into two other binomials, but that would just take a longer time. So the first thing we're going to do is square 4x. So 4x squared is 16x squared. Then we're going to multiply 4x by negative 1, which is negative 4x, and then times negative 4x by 2, which is negative 8x. Then, and lastly, we square negative 1, which is positive 1, and then we are pretty much almost done. This is the second last step of the question. We are now going to distribute. We are first going to distribute 3 throughout the first trinomial using distributive property. Then we are going to distribute negative 1 throughout the second trinomial. So let's do it. 3 times 2x is 6x squared. 3 times x is positive 3x. 3 times negative 15 is negative 45. And negative 1 times 16 is negative 1 times 16x is negative 16x squared. I meant that. Negative 1 times negative 8 is positive 8x. And negative 1 times positive 1 is just negative 1. Now we just collect the like terms. Sign. So 6x and 16x is negative 10x squared. Positive 3x and positive 8x is positive 11x. Negative 45 and negative 1 gives us negative 46. And we are done. Finally, wow, 3 a.m., that is great. So question number 2 says, factor this question fully. The first thing we are going to do is find a common factor between these three terms. Or in other words, just ask yourself, what can I take out of all these three terms? So I can take out 2, as all these terms are divisible by 2, and I can also take out a y, as all these terms have a y in it. Now, write your brackets and put in your leftovers. I do this by dividing every term by the common factor, which is 2y. So 12x squared y divided by 2y is 6x squared. Negative 58xy divided by 2y is negative 29x. And negative 10y divided by 2y is negative 5. Now that it is common factored, we can check if it is a perfect square trinomial. The first and last terms are not positive perfect squares, so it is not a positive square. So it is not a perfect square trinomial. It is not a simple trinomial either, as the first term has a number in front of it, which brings us to our last resort, a complex trinomial. So now we are going to use the decomposition method. The first thing you do is multiply the first and last number together. So 6 times negative 5 is negative 30. Now, you find two numbers and multiply the negative 30, but subtract to negative 29. The first two numbers that come to my mind are negative 30 and positive 1. They both multiply to negative 30 and as well subtract to negative 29. What we do now is break up the middle term into positive x and negative 30x. And we write what we originally wrote before. 2y 6x squared negative 5. So now we have created a grouping question. As for any grouping question, we break it into two and common factor each side. So for this side, we can take out an x, as x is a common factor for both of these terms. Then we write the leftovers in these brackets. 6x squared divided by x gives us 6x. And x divided by x just gives us 1. Now we common factor the other side. We could take out a negative 5 from both these terms. Then we just take out the leftovers like we've done before. Negative 30x divided by negative 5 is positive 6x. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is positive 1. We are finally almost done. All we have to do now is collect our leftovers again. We do this by first writing our equal sign, 2y, and then our two sets of brackets. It doesn't matter the order, but in the first bracket, I will write what are in these two brackets, which is, or are, 6x plus 1. And in the second bracket, I will write the numbers that are not in brackets, which in this case is x and negative 5. And we are done. Finally. So, for question number 3, we have a difference of squares factoring question. First, we check if there's a common factor. And we check and we see that there are no common factors other than 1. So, next, we check if we could factor the question. I recognize that there are two perfect squares separated by a negative sign. So yes, you can factor this question. Write your equal sign, and then after, write two sets of brackets. Next, what I like to do is square root both the terms and see what I get. If you square root x squared, you get x. And if you square root 25y squared, you get positive 5y. The next thing you do is write these in your first bracket. Then you write the exact same thing in the second bracket, but instead of a positive sign in the middle, you write a negative sign in the middle, or a subtraction sign, whatever you want to call it. And it seems that we are done factoring, but let's just check if you could factor it again. Over here, we see no perfect squares, so we cannot factor it again. We are done here. If you want to check your question to ensure that you are indeed correct, just expand by using the product of sum and difference shortcuts. In other words, just multiply the first two terms, and then multiply the second two terms. You should get what as your answer, you should get what you have started with. So let's do it. X times x is x squared. positive 5y multiplied by negative 5y is negative 25y squared. And we do. We have what we started with. So now we are done. Our answer is correct. So for question 4, it states, can you factor this question? If yes, factor, and if not, explain why you can't. This is a common factoring question. And yes, as these two binomials are exact opposites, you can factor the question. All you have to do is multiply the second binomial, as well as the number in front, by negative 1. So, equal sign, write the first binomial as is, so 8 times negative 1 is negative 8, brackets, 5 times negative 1 is negative 5, negative 2y times negative 1 is positive 2y. We are almost done. Now that the binomials have the same numbers, with the same signs, we just switch the inside terms, just so that they could look the same as these terms. Oh, by the way, always write your first binomial when proceeding to the next line, even though you don't do anything with it. Switching. And now you're pretty much done. All you have to do is collect the like terms and, yep. So 2y negative 5 and 3x minus 8. And you are finished.